The West Sea fog in late April arrived without announcement and stayed without courtesy. By 8:15 a.m. on the morning the crossing began, the fog had reduced horizontal visibility to approximately 200 meters at the surface, below the threshold at which any bridge crew could make a visual identification of a vessel more than 2 ship lengths away. The radar was the eye. The FLAR was less useful than usual because the fog equalized surface temperatures and reduced the thermal contrast between vessels and the surrounding water to a margin that made classification beyond 1 nautical mile unreliable. Sound carried better than light in the fog, which meant the LRAD was more effective at range than it would have been in clear conditions, and which also meant that the crew on the West Sea at 8:15 a.m. could hear the engine noise of vessels they could not see. An atmospheric inversion in which the audible horizon was further than the visual horizon, producing the unsettling effect of hearing things before or instead of seeing them. The U.S. destroyer was on station 7.2 nautical miles south of the northern limit line. The ROK Navy corvette, a Chamsuri-class patrol craft operating in joint patrol coordination with the destroyer, was 3.1 nautical miles to the east, holding its sector in the Western Channel patrol box that both vessels had been assigned since 0600. The combined patrol had been quiet since the watch began. The NLL was invisible in the fog, a legal line without physical markers, running east to west through water that looked the same on both sides of it and was treated very differently depending on which side a vessel was standing on. At 8:15 a.m., the radar began showing the crossing, not dramatically. The first indication was a density change in the contact distribution north of the NLL, contacts that had been clustered near the North Korean coastal waters on the northern side of the line beginning to show southward drift on their bearing updates. Individually, each contact movement was unremarkable. Cumulatively, over the first 4 minutes after 8:15 a.m., the pattern was legible. Something north of the NLL was moving south, and it was moving in quantity. Bridge CIC. I'm reading a significant change in the contact density north of the NLL. Contacts previously logged in North Korean coastal pattern are showing southward movement. I count 23 contacts now south of the NLL boundary. Contact count continuing to increase. I'm updating every sweep. Speeds are inconsistent, most contacts showing 3 to 4 knots consistent with drift or slow-moving vessels, 4 contacts showing 8 to 10 knots, potentially patrol-class platforms embedded in the fishing group. 23 contacts south of the NLL, and the count was increasing. The officer of the deck was at the radar display. He was watching the southern drift of what was becoming a wall of contacts on the picture, a broad front of returns moving from the north across the invisible line into the West Sea's southern waters. The 4 faster contacts at 8 to 10 knots were visible in the mass as slightly brighter returns, moving with more purpose than the fishing speed contacts surrounding them. KPN patrol boats, almost certainly, embedded in and using the fishing fleet as coverage and context. He pressed the intercom. At 8:17 a.m., the captain stepped onto the bridge. He walked directly to the radar display. The contact count was now 41 south of the NLL. The southern drift was continuing. The front of contacts was a broad east-west spread that extended across almost the full width of the Western Channel patrol box. Not a pincer, not a boxing formation, not a fast approach. A mass. A mass of fishing contacts and embedded KPN platforms moving south through the fog in a formation that exploited the one condition the fog provided, that it was very difficult for anyone to tell, from radar returns alone at this density, exactly which contacts were fishing boats and which were patrol craft, and therefore very difficult to articulate a specific military threat response to contacts that were legally fishing vessels until proven otherwise. I have the con. He looked at the CIC intercom. Contact count. 57 south of the NLL, sir. Still counting. 4 patrol profile contacts now bearing 235. Range 4.1 nautical miles, speed 9 knots. Main fishing body, approximately 53 contacts, ranging from 3.8 to 6.4 nautical miles south of the NLL, all within the Western Channel sector. 57 contacts. The fishing fleet had crossed the NLL with 4 KPN patrol escorts and was continuing southward into the joint patrol area. The fog was their cover in the visual dimension. The sheer number was their cover in the tactical dimension. Responding to 100 fishing boats crossing a line in dense fog required a different framework than responding to a fast attack formation. The mass was the strategy. At 8:18 a.m., the ROK Navy corvette established contact on the direct coordination circuit. The ROK commanding officer's transmission was in English, the operational language for bilateral coordination. U.S. destroyer. This is ROK Corvette Bravo 3. We have the contact picture. I count 63 contacts south of the NLL on my plot. We may have slightly different radar coverage. I'm identifying 4 patrol profile contacts embedded in the main body. Our rules of engagement allow us to broadcast warnings on the Korean maritime frequency and to establish an acoustic boundary. We are authorized to coordinate with you on maintaining our patrol stations. Requesting your coordination plan. Over. Our rules of engagement allow. The specific phrasing that signaled the ROK commanding officer was defining the parameters of what his vessel could do in this situation under its national command authority. The ROK Navy operated in the West Sea under a different national legal framework than the U.S. Navy, a framework that reflected South Korea's direct relationship with the NLL as a contested boundary with its northern neighbor, and that gave the ROK commanding officer specific authorities and specific constraints that were not identical to the U.S. destroyers. The captain acknowledged and provided his coordination plan in 3 sentences. The U.S. destroyer would hold its patrol station and establish an acoustic boundary with LRAD on the Korean language channel, documenting all contacts and transmitting the full contact picture to 2nd Fleet Command in Seoul in real time. The ROK corvette would hold its eastern sector position and conduct its own acoustic broadcast on the Korean military frequency. Both vessels would maintain their positions without altering toward the crossing fleet. Bravo 3 confirmed. Coordinating. Maintain your station and broadcast. We will share contact picture updates every 2 minutes. Over. CPA to nearest patrol profile contact, 3.8 nautical miles. Time at 9 knots, approximately 25 minutes. CPA to the nearest KPN patrol contact, holding at 3.8 nautical miles. Time at 9 knots, approximately 25 minutes. At 8:20 a.m., the LRAD was authorized. Low-power broadcast mode, Korean language, directed toward the mass of crossing contacts on a bearing that covered the primary concentration of the fleet. All vessels that have crossed the northern limit line and are currently in the West Sea Patrol area. This is a United States Navy warship. You are operating south of the northern limit line in waters controlled by the Republic of Korea. Return to your designated fishing areas immediately. This crossing is being documented and reported to Republic of Korea military authorities and to United Nations Command. Return immediately. The broadcast was in Korean, not because the U.S. destroyer's crew included Korean speakers as primary, but because the communication system carried a pre-recorded operational broadcast in Korean that had been part of the West Sea Patrol package since the bilateral coordination agreement with the ROK Navy had been updated 2 years earlier. The message was standard, accurate, and directed at every contact in the broadcast arc simultaneously. The ROK corvette transmitted its own broadcast on the Korean military frequency simultaneously, a different message in military Korean rather than civilian broadcast Korean, more direct and more specifically addressed to the KPN patrol vessels embedded in the formation. North Korean naval vessels operating south of the northern limit line. This is Republic of Korea Navy. You are in violation of the Armistice Agreement provisions governing the Western Sea boundary. Identify yourselves and return to your designated waters immediately. You are being tracked by Republic of Korea and United States Naval Forces. 2 broadcasts, 2 frequencies, 2 languages simultaneously. The combined acoustic presence of the US LRAD and the ROK military frequency broadcast covered the full width of the crossing fleet's contact picture. The fog carried the sound. Fog in the West Sea did that, absorbed it and directed it and delivered it more completely than open-air broadcasts in clear conditions. The crews of the fishing vessels that had crossed the NLL could hear both broadcasts. The crew of the KPN patrol boats could hear both broadcasts. Whether they would respond to them was a different calculation. CPA to nearest patrol profile contact, 3.4 nautical miles. Time, approximately 23 minutes. CPA to nearest patrol profile contact, 3.4 nautical miles. Time, approximately 23 minutes. At 8:22 a.m., the first friction event arrived. The contact count south of the NLL had reached 78 and was still climbing. The Western Channel Patrol Box, the 6x12 nautical mile patrol area that the two ships were assigned, was now populated with contacts across its entire northern half. But more specifically, the radar picture was developing a problem that the fog was specifically responsible for. At this contact density, the radar returns were beginning to merge. Individual contacts at 200 to 300 yard separation in dense fog returned overlapping signals on the destroyer's radar, and the radar's contact separation algorithm was having difficulty distinguishing individual vessels from clusters of vessels that had drifted to within each other's radar shadow. The CIC watch officer reported it. Bridge CIC. We are experiencing contact merging on the radar at ranges below 3 nautical miles. Individual contact separation is degrading at the current density and range. I can no longer give you precise individual contact counts for the northern sector. I have a solid mass return indicating heavy vessel concentration in the northern sector with individual contacts separable beyond 3 nautical miles. Best estimate, 80 to 90 contacts south of the NLL total. The 4 patrol profile contacts are still separable. They are the faster moving, higher intensity returns within the mass, 80 to 90 contacts. The merging of radar returns in the fog meant that precise individual contact management was no longer possible for the bulk of the fleet. The 4 KPN patrol contacts were still individually tracked because their speed and radar cross-section kept them distinct within the merged mass. But the fishing fleet itself had become, on the radar display, a distributed density rather than a collection of identifiable individual vessels. This was the tactical significance of the fog in combination with the mass. The fog prevented visual identification. The density prevented precise radar separation. What remained was the aggregate, a massive contact south of the NLL, moving south at drift speed with 4 faster elements embedded in it, and the US and ROK vessels holding their patrol stations in the southern portion of the box. At 8:24 a.m., the second friction event arrived through the coordination circuit. The ROK commanding officer transmitted, U.S. Destroyer Bravo 3. I have a message from ROK Fleet Command. They are requesting we avoid any maneuver northward toward the main contact body. ROK political situation requires we maintain our current positions and document. ROK Fleet Command is coordinating with 2nd Army Command on a response. We are to hold and document. Concur with your plan. Over. Hold and document. The ROK Fleet Command was engaged. The political context of 80-plus contacts crossing the NLL in the West Sea, in the same waters where the Cheonan had been sunk, where Yeonpyeong Island had been shelled, where the maritime boundary between the two Koreas had been contested for decades, was not a tactical decision. It was a political decision that was being made at the level above the 2 commanding officers. Hold and document was the order from above. Hold and document was already what both vessels were doing, the captain acknowledged. He had expected it. In the West Sea, with this contact picture, hold and document was the correct operational response at every level simultaneously. Tactically correct, politically correct, legally correct, and practically correct given the fog, the density, and the impossibility of precise discrimination between fishing boats and KPN platforms at this range and in these conditions. CPA to nearest patrol profile contact, 2.8 nautical miles. The 4 KPN patrol contacts had maintained their 8 to 10 knot speed and were continuing southward with the fishing mass. At 8:26 a.m., the LRAD broadcast was repeated. The ROK corvette repeated its broadcast simultaneously. The combined audio coverage of the 2 broadcasts in the fog reached the contact mass at ranges up to 4 nautical miles, with the specific clarity that fog sound propagation produced. This time, a partial response. 22 of the contacts in the northern edge of the mass, Contacts that had been southward drifting at 3 to 4 knots showed speed changes, not reversals. Speed reductions from 3 to 4 knots southward to near zero, with some showing slight northward drift. 22 contacts out of 80 plus. Not a response, but a partial response. 22 vessels whose crews had heard the combined broadcasts and had, for whatever reason, fear of documented NLL violation, concern about the specific Korean language ROK military broadcast, uncertainty about what the two naval vessels south of them were doing, had slowed their southward movement. The captain watched the partial response on the radar display. 22 out of 80. The other 60 plus were still southward. The 4 KPN patrol contacts were still at 8 to 10 knots and unaffected by the broadcasts. CPA to nearest KPN patrol contact, 2.4 nautical miles. Time at current speed, approximately 16 minutes. The fog at 8:27 a.m. was beginning to show the first indicators of thinning, not lifting, not clearing, but the specific atmospheric change that the bridge crew had been watching since the watch began. A slight increase in the brightness of the indirect light from the east, where the morning sun was beginning to penetrate the fog layer from above rather than through it. In the West Sea in late April, morning fog typically thinned from the east as the sun elevation increased. It did not clear dramatically. It thinned gradually, extending the visual horizon from 200 meters toward 400, then 600, then sometimes 800 meters before achieving a transition that was visible but not definitive. The fog was the fishing fleet's cover. The thinning of the fog, however gradual, was a development with tactical implications for a fleet that had crossed the NLL under fog protection. At 8:29 a.m., the captain authorized the third LRAD broadcast, this time a different message, directed specifically at the 4 KPN patrol contacts by bearing North Korean patrol vessels bearing 350 from us, range 2.3 nautical miles. This is a United States warship. You are south of the northern limit line in Republic of Korea-administered waters. You are being individually tracked by radar. Your vessel identifiers, positions, and tracks are being recorded and transmitted to United Nations Command in real time. This is your final advisory to reverse course and return north of the northern limit line. Individually tracked by radar, the KPN patrol contacts could not see the U.S. destroyer in the fog. They could not see the ROK corvette. What they could know was what the LRAD broadcast told them. Both vessels had their radar tracks, individual tracks, transmitted to UN Command in real time. The documentation of KPN patrol vessel crossings of the NLL had specific armistice implications that fishing vessel crossings did not. A KPN patrol boat south of the NLL was an armistice violation with a paper trail. A fishing boat south of the NLL was a DPRK government headache of a different category. The tail arrived at 8:31 a.m. The 4 KPN patrol contacts began decelerating simultaneously. Not dramatically, from 9 knots to 6 knots in a single radar sweep interval, then from 6 to 4 in the next. All 4 simultaneously. The synchronized deceleration of 4 contacts was not fishing boat behavior. It was the specific coordinated action of vessels that had received an order, the same order at the same time, coordinated from a command authority that was watching the situation and had made a decision. The KPN patrol contacts had received an order to slow. An order to slow was preparation for an order to reverse. CIC bridge. KPN patrol contacts, all 4 have begun decelerating simultaneously. Currently showing 4 knots, were at 9. All 4 decelerating in coordination. The captain watched the deceleration across 2 additional radar sweeps. The 4 contacts confirmed, all below 4 knots, all showing the bearing drift pattern of vessels reducing speed prior to a course change rather than simply holding a reduced speed position. At 8:33 a.m., the fog showed its first meaningful thinning. Not cleared, thinned. The visual horizon at 8:33 a.m. on the bridge extended to approximately 350 meters, where it had been 200 meters at 8:15 a.m. On radar, the contact merging problem in the northern sector began to resolve fractionally, as the range at which individual contacts separated improved slightly with the marginally improved atmospheric conditions. Some contacts that had been merged were beginning to appear as distinct returns again. The blink came in 3 layers. On the radar display, the 4 kpn patrol contacts, now at 3 to 4 knots, began showing northward-bearing drift. All 4 simultaneously. The drift was slight, the kind of drift visible only across 3 or 4 radar sweeps, but it was consistent and its direction was north. Then, the mass of fishing contacts in the northern sector began a similar but more gradual and less synchronized drift. Where 22 contacts had shown speed reductions at 8:26 a.m., now 41 contacts were showing northward drift or speed to zero behavior. Then, the ROK corvette transmitted on the coordination circuit. U.S. destroyer, Bravo 3. I'm seeing the patrol contacts reversing on my plot. Main body appears to be following. Count of contacts south of NLL is decreasing on my radar. I'm now showing 71 distinct contacts, down from my peak of 83. Contacts are returning north. Over. Decreasing. The combined effect, 4 kpn patrol contacts reversing, the fog thinning enough to reduce the cover that had made the mass crossing possible, the dual LRAD broadcast documented on UN command channels, the individual tracking declaration had produced the reversal. Bravo 3, this is U.S. destroyer. Concur, I'm showing northward drift across the contact picture. Maintaining station. Continue documentation. Over. The ROK corvette maintained its position to the east. The U.S. destroyer maintained its position. Neither vessel had maneuvered toward the crossing fleet at any point during the 44 minutes since the first contact south of the NLL was logged. They had held their stations, broadcast their warnings, documented the mass and waited for the fog and the documentation and the LRAD broadcasts and the armistice violation paper trail to do what they were designed to do. By 8:42 a.m., the contact count south of the NLL had dropped to 31. By 8:50 a.m., 19. By 9:03 a.m., 4, all of which were confirmed as genuine fishing contacts that had drifted south of the NLL without deliberate intent and were gradually working their way back north in the improving visibility. By 9:10 a.m., the Western Channel patrol box was clear. The 4 kpn patrol contacts had crossed back north of the NLL at 8:39 a.m. The fog had continued its gradual thinning. By 9:15 a.m., horizontal visibility had improved to approximately 600 meters. No one on the bridge spoke for a long moment. The helmsman had held station through 44 minutes of a radar picture that had gone from standard patrol background to 80-plus contacts south of an international boundary in fog, and had returned to standard background without the destroyer moving more than 50 meters from its patrol station waypoint in any direction. Position hold in the West Sea fog with a strong current required continuous minor inputs at the helm. His hands had been providing those inputs since the watch began, and they had provided them through the crossing and through the broadcasts and through the radar picture with its merged contacts and its 4 faster profiles and its gradual reversal. The position had held. The officer of the deck looked at the radar display. The Western Channel patrol box. Standard contact density, a few fishing returns at the northern boundary, the ROK corvette 3 nautical miles east, the AIS returns of 2 commercial vessels transiting the southern portion of the box. The NLL was invisible, as it always was, a legal line through fog or through clear water, present whether visible or not. He straightened his collar. The fog was thinning. By 09:30, it would be possible to see the northern horizon. The northern horizon would show nothing. The NLL had no markers, and the waters north of it looked exactly like the waters south of it. The crossing had happened in the fog and had reversed in the fog, and the record of it existed in the radar logs and the LRAD broadcast logs and the UN command documentation transmission that the communications officer had maintained continuously since 8:19 a.m. The captain walked to the chart table. The encounter report would go to 2nd Fleet Command Seoul, to 7th Fleet, to United Nations Command's Military Armistice Commission, and to the U.S. Embassy Seoul. The ROK corvette's parallel reporting would go through Korean national channels to the same recipients at the Military Armistice Commission. The 2 encounter reports would be cross-referenced and filed as a joint documentation event. UN Command's Military Armistice Commission maintained the formal record of NLL violations under the Armistice Framework. The crossing of 83 vessels, including 4 KPN patrol contacts south of the NLL, documented by 2 naval vessels and transmitted to UN Command in real time, was an armistice record entry. Full encounter report to 2nd Fleet Seoul and UN Command MAC include the complete radar track archive from initial NLL crossing at 08:15 through complete withdrawal at 09:03, the LRAD broadcast transcripts and timestamps, the ROK Corvette coordination log, and the 4 KPN patrol contact individual tracks with timing of NLL crossing and NLL recrossing. He looked at the chart. Coordinate with Bravo 3 on joint report format. A pause. Resume patrol pattern. The visibility should be above a nautical mile by 0930. He looked at the radar picture once more. Clear. Good watch. The record assembled here speaks in the language the ocean keeps. 83 surface contacts, fishing-class vessels with 4 KPN patrol-class platforms embedded, crossed the northern limit line and entered the Western Channel patrol area beginning at 8:15 a.m. under conditions of dense fog with horizontal visibility below 200 meters. Radar was the sole reliable identification sensor throughout the event. Maximum contact count south of the NLL, 83. KPN patrol profile contacts identified by speed and radar cross-section. 4. Maintaining 8 to 10 knots within the fishing mass. LRAD broadcast transmitted. 3. Language, Korean. ROK Corvette coordinated broadcasts simultaneous on Korean military frequency. Partial fishing fleet response to first and second broadcasts. 22 contacts showed southward speed reduction. Full KPN patrol contact reversal, 8:31 a.m. Synchronized deceleration across all 4 contacts, consistent with coordinated command authority response. Fog thinning began approximately 8:27 a.m. Contributed to withdrawal conditions. Fog cover that enabled the crossing was no longer stable by 8:33 a.m. Contact count south of NLL by 8:50 a.m. 19. By 9:03 a.m. 4, all assessed as unintentional drift. Western Channel patrol box cleared, 9:10 a.m. U.S. destroyer position change during 55-minute event, less than 50 meters from patrol station waypoint. ROK Corvette position change, none. Course alterations toward contact mass, 0. Weapons authorized, no. Weapons released, no. UN Command Military Armistice Commission documentation transmitted in real time, yes. Joint U.S. ROK encounter report filed, yes. The West Sea fog in late April lasts until the morning sun finds it. The crossing took 44 minutes to assemble and 26 minutes to reverse. The fog lasted long enough for one, but not long enough for the other. The record of what happened in between belongs to the Armistice Archive, the patrol logs, and the 2 radar systems that never stopped sweeping.